Imagine you're a military strategist. You need to control the entire Pacific Ocean, an ocean so massive it covers 1/3 of the entire planet Earth. You need a base, a resupply point, a fortress, a watchdog. Where do you put it? You look at the map. And right there, sitting almost perfectly in the middle of the Pacific, nearly 2,400 miles from the US mainland, over 3,800 miles from Japan, and about 2,500 miles from Alaska, is a tiny chain of volcanic islands. Those islands are Hawaii. And here's what's wild: Hawaii isn't just nice to have for the United States. It is, arguably, the single most strategically important piece of land the US has ever acquired. Not Texas. Not California. Not even Alaska. Hawaii. Today, we're going to tell the story of why, through geography, power, economics, and the deep logic of the Pacific. By the end of this video, you'll never look at those tropical islands the same way again. Let's go. First, let's understand where Hawaii actually is, because this is everything. The Hawaiian archipelago is a chain of 137 islands, stretching about 1,500 miles across the central North Pacific Ocean. The 8 main islands sit between roughly 19 degrees and 23 degrees north latitude. The biggest island, simply called the Big Island, is still forming. Hawaii is, geologically speaking, a living, breathing place. Kilauea volcano has been erupting almost continuously for decades. But geography here isn't just about the land. It's about the ocean around it. The Pacific is not just big, it's incomprehensibly big. It contains more water than all the world's land combined. And for centuries, anyone who wanted to cross it had a serious problem: there was almost nowhere to stop. Think of old sailing routes. Ships crossing the Pacific needed fresh water, food, and repairs. Hawaii sits almost exactly at the crossroads of the most important Pacific shipping lanes, the routes connecting North America to Asia, and connecting the US West Coast to Southeast Asia and Australia. This is not a coincidence the United States ignored. Ancient Polynesian navigators discovered these islands around 300 to 400 AD, navigating by stars and ocean swells. Europeans first contacted Hawaii in 1778 when Captain James Cook arrived. And within decades, everyone, American merchants, whalers, and eventually military planners, realized the same thing. Whoever controls Hawaii controls the Central Pacific. The story of how Hawaii became American is not a simple or comfortable one. It's a story of sugar, power, and a queen who was overthrown. By the mid-1800s, American missionaries and businessmen had deeply embedded themselves in Hawaiian society. The island's economy became dominated by sugar plantations, enormous agricultural operations that fed the growing American sweet tooth. Plantation owners, many of them American descendants, grew fabulously wealthy. But they had a problem. U.S. tariffs on Hawaiian sugar were hurting their profits. In 1875, the U.S. and the Kingdom of Hawaii signed the Reciprocity Treaty. Hawaii would send sugar to the U.S. duty-free. In exchange, the United States got exclusive rights to use Pearl Harbor as a naval station. At the time, most Americans didn't fully grasp what that meant. Military strategists absolutely did. Then came 1893, the moment that changed everything. Queen Liliuokalani, Hawaii's last reigning monarch, tried to restore power to the Hawaiian people and reduce the influence of foreign landowners. The American sugar barons panicked. With the backing of U.S. Marines from a nearby warship, they staged a coup and overthrew the Queen. The U.S. government, under President Grover Cleveland, actually condemned the overthrow as illegal. Cleveland wanted to restore the Queen, but Congress refused. 5 years later, in 1898, everything changed. The Spanish-American War broke out. The U.S. needed to resupply ships heading to the Philippines. Suddenly, Hawaii's strategic value was undeniable to every politician in Washington. Hawaii was formally annexed in 1898. It became a U.S. territory, and in 1959, the 50th state of the Union. But here's the deeper question: why did the U.S. want it so badly, beyond the sugar? The answer is pure geopolitics, and it all comes down to a man named Alfred Thayer Mahan. In 1890, an American naval officer named Alfred Thayer Mahan published a book called The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. It was, essentially, a manual for global domination, and it was read obsessively by leaders in the US, Britain, Germany, and Japan. Mahan's argument was simple: the nation that controls the seas controls the world. And to control the seas, you need coaling stations and naval bases spread across the ocean like a network of checkpoints. Hawaii was the obvious Pacific checkpoint. Pearl Harbor, on the island of Oahu, offered a deep, sheltered natural harbor, one of the finest in the entire Pacific, capable of hosting an entire battle fleet. By the early 20th century, the U.S. had turned Pearl Harbor into the beating heart of its Pacific military presence. The Pacific Fleet was stationed there. It became U.S. Pacific Command Headquarters, now called Indo-Pacific Command, the largest unified military command on Earth, overseeing 52% of the globe's surface area. Then came December 7, 1941. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor killed over 2,400 Americans and pulled the United States into World War II. But here's the geopolitical irony: Japan attacked Pearl Harbor precisely because it was so important. Japan knew that if the U.S. Pacific Fleet survived, America could project power across the entire ocean. The attack was meant to cripple that ability. It failed. And Hawaii's role only grew more critical after the war. Today, Hawaii hosts Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam, the home of the U.S. Pacific Fleet and U.S. Pacific Air Forces combined. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, which oversees all military operations across an area stretching from the U.S. West Coast to the India-Pakistan border, and from the Arctic to Antarctica. It is the command responsible for America's strategic relationship with China, North Korea, and the entire Pacific region. When you hear about U.S. tensions with China over Taiwan, or naval patrols in the South China Sea, though? When you hear about U.S. tensions with China over Taiwan, or naval patrols in the South China Sea, those operations are coordinated from Hawaii. Sitting 2,400 miles from the mainland, Hawaii gives the U.S. military the ability to respond rapidly to any crisis in the Pacific without exposing the continental U.S. to direct threat. It's a forward-deployed fortress, mid-ocean. Most people think of Hawaii economically and think tourism. Beautiful resorts, hula dancing, luau's. And yes, tourism is Hawaii's largest industry, contributing roughly 21% of the state's GDP and supporting over 200,000 jobs. But there's a much bigger economic story here, and it operates at the global scale. Hawaii as a Pacific logistics hub. The port of Honolulu handles billions of dollars of cargo annually, goods flowing between the U.S. mainland, Asia, and the Pacific Islands. Given Hawaii's position directly on Pacific shipping lanes, it serves as a natural waypoint for trans-Pacific commerce. The submarine cable story. Beneath the ocean floor, running through Hawaii, are some of the world's most critical undersea internet cables, the physical infrastructure carrying the majority of data between the United States and Asia. Financial transactions, communications, military data, much of it flows through fiber optic cables that pass near or through Hawaiian waters. The U.S. has strong reasons to maintain strategic control over this region. The science economy. This one surprises people. Hawaii sits atop Mauna Kea, a dormant volcano that rises nearly 14,000 feet, and because of its altitude, its position near the equator, and its distance from light pollution, it hosts some of the world's most important astronomical observatories. NASA, the European Southern Observatory, and others conduct critical space research from Hawaii. The islands are also a hub for ocean research and climate science. The Jones Act and mainland dependency. Here's a geography economics tension worth understanding. Because of a 1920 law called the Jones Act, all goods shipped between U.S. ports must be carried on American-built, American-crewed ships. This means nearly everything Hawaii imports from the mainland, food, fuel, building materials, costs significantly more than it would otherwise. Hawaii imports about 90% of its food. This geographic isolation has real economic consequences for ordinary Hawaiians, even as the state's strategic value to the nation remains enormous. Here's where we connect everything to the world right now. The 21st century's defining geopolitical rivalry is between the United States and China. And the central battlefield, not in a military sense, but in a strategic sense, is the Pacific Ocean. China has been rapidly building up its naval capabilities, constructing artificial islands in the South China Sea, and projecting power further into the Pacific. Its Belt and Road Initiative has brought Chinese investment and influence to Pacific Island nations that were previously firmly within the American sphere. In this context, Hawaii is more important than ever. INDOPACOM, headquartered in Hawaii, is the command actively managing the strategic competition with China. Every freedom of navigation operation in the South China Sea, every US military exercise with Japan or South Korea or Australia, every arms sale to Taiwan, these are strategically coordinated in Hawaii. And there's something else. The Pacific Island nations, Fiji, Palau, Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, sit between Hawaii and Asia. The US has compacts of free association with several of these nations, meaning they allow US military access in exchange for economic support. Hawaii is the anchor of this entire network of alliances. When China recently signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands, it sent alarm bells through Washington because the Solomons sit dangerously close to the US-Australia supply line. The response was coordinated, in large part, from Hawaii. Geography doesn't change. And Hawaii's geography means that as long as the US has interests in the Pacific, which it will for the foreseeable future, Hawaii remains the irreplaceable foundation of American power projection westward. Beyond strategy and economics, there's one more dimension to Hawaii's importance that doesn't show up on military maps, and that's its role as a living crossroads of cultures. Hawaii is the most ethnically diverse state in America. Native Hawaiians, Japanese Americans, Filipino Americans, Chinese Americans, Pacific Islanders, and people from the U.S. mainland all coexist in a society unlike any other in the country. In a nation that is increasingly looking toward Asia as its most critical strategic and economic partner, Hawaii is, culturally, a bridge. It's where East and West genuinely meet, not just symbolically, but in neighborhoods, families, food, language, and daily life. That soft dimension has its own geopolitical value. Hawaii humanizes American presence in the Pacific in a way that an aircraft carrier cannot. So why is Hawaii so important to the USA? Because geography is destiny. A chain of volcanic islands, formed by nothing more than a hotspot in the Earth's mantle, happened to emerge in the exact center of the world's largest ocean. And that accident of geology became one of the most strategically valuable pieces of land on Earth. Hawaii is a military fortress in the middle of the Pacific. It's a logistics hub on the world's busiest shipping corridor. It's a scientific outpost watching the stars and the seas. It's a cultural bridge between America and Asia. And it is the command center for the US's most consequential 21st century rivalry. The next time someone says Hawaii is just a vacation destination, you'll know better. If you found this video interesting, you know what to do: like, subscribe, and ring that bell, so you never miss a night data video. And I want to hear from you. Which country or territory do you think is the most geopolitically underrated in the world? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and your answers genuinely shape what we cover next. See you in the next one.